Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing a move update that has dramatically exceeded expectations in this Memories in Motion meta. That is the buff to Diggersby. Now, these battles were submitted to the channel by a member of the community, the Mega Junko, so many thanks for the battle submission. Now, in a meta that is dominated by FORRETRESS with both Bug Bite and Volt Switch, there had to be a meta answer, and that answer is Diggersby. Diggersby completely destroys both FORRETRESS movesets, and with its new faster pacing, it's able to spam out its charge stacks even faster than it was before. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and in game number 1, he picks up a pretty solid lead, Shadow Malamar into Metacham. The full team behind the Malamar is the aforementioned Diggersby and Aegislash. Anytime you see Aegislash, you know it's going to be a pretty high skill ceiling team, as Aegislash is an incredibly powerful Pokemon, but it does require careful piloting as it can be a little bit unwieldy. Metacham's Dynamic Punch does get shielded. Malamar not going to fire off its energy to go for the charge stack priority tie. Instead, going to go for a double shield and a full farm down. The opponent not switching out is a pretty massive surprise, because they just gave a monster energy head start to Malamar. In comes Wigglytuff, but Wigglytuff is really not going to like superpower pressure here. Malamar should be able to make 3 superpowers into the Wigglytuff as they try and farm down. They're going to be shielding up the second, but Malamar gets to a third. This is a double debuff superpower. I think Wigglytuff can hold on here, and the opponent knows it. They no shield. In comes Aegislash. There's FORRETRESS. In comes Diggersby. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. Hopping into game number 2, leading Shadow Malamar into Shadow FORRETRESS. Is this Bug Bite? It is Bug Bite, and there's a safe switch into Diggersby. Opponent's going to respond with Jellicent, but with Mudshot on Diggersby, not only is Diggersby faster to get to these Scorching Sands, but the good news for Diggersby is that it actually can hit for neutral damage, whereas before with Quick Attack, it was hitting for double resisted damage in that Jellicent matchup. Usually when you see a Bug Bite FORRETRESS lead and a Water type as the safe switch, typically the most common third is going to be Carbink. So winning switch advantage would be very, very helpful because that would put Aegislash on the Carbink, and Aegislash would absolutely destroy it. However, even if Diggersby isn't able to win switch advantage, just getting both shields down from the opponent could also set up the Aegislash to sweep. Diggersby Scorching Sands will be shielded and Jellicent firing off another Surf, but Diggersby knows switch advantage or shields down. Either one is acceptable. Diggersby has gotten it low enough where even a Fire Punch will probably be enough to secure the knockout. Jellicent has taken so much damage. Jellicent will put up the shield, undertap the Surf. Switch advantage has been lost. However, all is still going according to plan because all shields are down, and that means it's time for Aegislash to sweep. What a beautiful play as well, farming it into 1 HP range and then sniping down with a charging from Aegislash. In comes the Shadow FORRETRESS because it's highly likely the final Pokemon is going to be a Carbink. And if it's a Carbink, the writing's already on the wall in this one. There is just no way out. The Bug Bites, even at a -1 defense on the Aegislash, still doing basically nothing. They fire off a second Sand Tomb, and Aegislash will be able to absorb that. Aegislash farms up just shy of 100 energy and goes for the Shadow Ball. This Shadow Ball is a guaranteed 1-hit KO onto Shadow FORRETRESS. Shadow FORRETRESS gets knocked out in the back. There's the Carbink, and the Aegislash is set to sweep. Aegislash fires off Gyro Ball. Carbink barely survives. There's the pivot into Malamar, sniping down with Psywaves, and that is a good game. Hopping into game number 3, Shadow Malamar versus a regular Malamar. Considering how weak the backline is to Malamar, catching this on the lead will be very, very helpful. Now, this battler did not provide their IV, so we don't know if they're going to be a CMP winning Malamar, but I would assume with a team composition like this, being able to win that mirror CMP would have a lot of value, because that way you would be able to eliminate opposing Malamars instead of them being an absolute nuisance. The opponent makes a very nice catch. They're able to catch that foul play onto Steelix. However, there is a very strong answer to Steelix on this team. Malamar rebanks a move. In comes Diggersby. And this poor Steelix, it just can't do anything. It doesn't matter what they throw. Steelix goes for the crunch. Diggersby just does not care. Diggersby can look to farm up to 100 energy, take the knockout with the Fire Punch, and exit with charge attacks loaded to threaten the Malamar when it gets brought back in. So Diggersby does just that, firing off the Fire Punch. Going for a slight undercharge here, actually. Fire Punch will still take the knockout, and back in comes the Malamar. But this is a very easy shield for the Diggersby. Diggersby just wants to remove the Malamar, or, like last game, just try and get shields down. Because shields down for Aegislash is probably going to go well. Scorching Sands will be shielded. Diggersby able to make another Scorching Sands. This new pacing is very, very nice. This Scorching Sands is going to pressure the final shield from the opponent. They have Empoleon. In comes Aegislash, and there's the immediate top left. They know they have no chance of winning that game. Picking up a terrible lead in the next match, Shadow Malamar into Shadow Mightyena. Shadow Mightyena, I would argue, is kind of the scourge of the Open Grade League right now. It is the new fast move Pressuremon. Unfortunately, Malamar is just getting absolutely torn to smithereens by these sucker punches. If there's ever a chance though, it's in getting both shields down and then trying to set up the Aegislash to sweep. Malamar will be able to make a second superpower and force the final shield, but the Mightyena exits the matchup at basically full health. Opponent knows their Mightyena is strong in the back, they save it, there's a Seed Bomb catch attempt, and it's unsuccessful, and it feels like it's all going wrong. Shield comes up from the Aegislash as Gourgeist goes for the Shadow Ball, but Gourgeist's pacing is just so incredibly good. Gourgeist, that 3-2 alternating pacing to Shadow Ball. Unfortunately, Aegislash is just taking massive damage. Aegislash will fire off Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball easily going to be picking up the one-hit knockout onto the Gourgeist. This is super effective damage, even from like a regular Pokemon that would take the knockout. In comes Diggersby, launching Scorching Sands as the final Pokemon is revealed to be Carbink. There might actually be a chance. Diggersby has such a dominant matchup, and it gets to these Scorching Sands so quickly. The Mightyena does have a lot of energy, but if Carbink never lands a Moonblast, the Diggersby will be too healthy, and they're just not going to get there. The CMP tie, Diggersby denying all that Carbink energy. Scorching Sands will take the knockout, and somehow, against all odds, despite being ABA weak to the Mightyena, he finds a way. Scorching Sands takes down Mightyena. No, they live on 1 HP, and a catch. I thought Mightyena was getting KO'd. I stand corrected. The catch of the crunch, and that is just absolute savagery. Back in comes Diggersby. Crunch is not going to knock out. They go for the crunch. Diggersby stands tall, and there it is. What a win from Junko. Hopping into the next match, Shadow Malamar into Tinkaton. Now, this is a matchup that we might see a lot more after the Tinkaton Calm Day. It was confirmed that Tinkaton is getting a Calm Day, and on top of that, it's getting a brand new move in Gigaton Hammer. This move looks incredibly strong, so I am very excited. Very nice catch of a Bulldoze bait onto Diggersby. Now, Diggersby is going to be answered with Jellicent. Jellicent decides to fire off its first charge attack on alignment, wanting to guarantee that it gets that Surf at full power, not wanting to risk any Scorching Sands debuff shenanigans. Scorching Sands does not get the debuff, so they could have just fired off that charge attack on good timing, but they wanted to ensure that it would land because 2 Surfs comes very close to 2-shotting. Back in comes the Malamar. Malamar farming up so much energy, well over back-to-back charge attacks as it fires off the foul play. Jellicent will no shield getting knocked out. Back in comes the Tinkaton. Tinkaton can go for a Bulldoze. Bulldoze will come very close to knocking out, but Shadow Malamar should be able to hang on. Shadow Malamar survives. Bulldoze debuff does come through, but Malamar has back-to-back superpowers available. First is going to connect. Second, even at -1, I believe should just about take the knockout here. Superpower will be shielded. In comes Aegislash, and it's Lickilicky in the back. Aegislash is up a shield in this endgame, but the pacing on Lickilicky is relentless. Every 4 rollouts, another Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball will not knock out the Aegislash, but Aegislash has shields to spare, so it will use the first one here. Lickilicky farms up, goes for another Shadow Ball. This time a no shield comes out from the Aegislash, and Aegislash farms up to 100 energy. It's time for Aegislash to strike back. Aegislash going to be changing into the Blade form as it fires off Gyro Ball. Gyro Ball will not take the one-hit knockout, but it will inflict some pretty massive damage onto the Lickilicky. Another Gyro Ball is loaded, another shield. In comes Diggersby, and there is the combination play. Will Scorching Sands be enough to secure the knockout? No, Lickilicky with the 1 HP survive, and in comes Tinkaton. Back in comes Aegislash. Aegislash just needs to make it to a Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball will easily take the knockout, and the opponent only has 1 HP remaining on the Lickilicky. So there's not really going to be anything they can do as long as Aegislash gets to this move, and it did. Aegislash did lose charge attack priority, but Aegislash still had a shield to spare. So the shield comes up, Aegislash gets the Shadow Ball, and this is going to be game over. As Shadow Ball knocks out Tinkaton, all that's left is 1 HP on Lickilicky, and this team just keeps on cooking. We move to the next match, and it's a perfect mirror lead, Shadow Malamar versus Shadow Malamar. The last Malamar ended up catching out of the lead matchup, so we haven't yet seen if this is a CMP winning Malamar. Malamar gonna farm up just shy of the back-to-back foul plays and start unleashing energy. Foul play no shielded by the opponent. That hits for some pretty monster damage, and he's actually going to be investing in this matchup, putting up the early protect shield. He goes for the foul play, winning charge attack priority over the opponent, no Psywave sneak, so now he knows he's always going to be able to win this matchup. He's going to be actually double shielding, so he is fully investing in the Malamar. Will the opponent give up their final shield? No, they're going to pivot out into Corviknight, and they're going to regret that decision as Corviknight now gets met with Diggersby. And Diggersby has such a convincing matchup because most Corviknights are no longer running the attack weight that's needed to break point with sand attacks to do 2 damage instead of 1. And 1 damage sand attacks are basically healing the Diggersby. Diggersby just gets to spam out fire punches, absorbing damage for days, And importantly, before switching out, Junko farmed up a superpower and a half on the Malamar, and that energy will be very threatening in the endgame. Diggersby will go for another Fire Punch. This will barely miss the knockout, but get this Corviknight extremely low. Diggersby just gonna full commit to the farm down. I think the opponent may have made the payback here, and they did. So Diggersby content just sacrificing the energy in exchange for even more Malamar farm. In the back is Empoleon. Opponent makes a nice catch. They're able to catch onto the Malamar, but they're gonna have to give up that final Protect Shield. And when you give up the final Protect Shield of the match, you just lose to Aegislash. Superpower is shielded. In comes the Aegislash, and we should see a top left any moment here. No, the opponent's actually playing it out. They are staying in with the Empoleon. They are refusing to quit. But trainer, there is no path forward in this game. Aegislash is inevitable. Aegislash absorbing the Hydro Cannon, making it to the Shadow Ball, and this is going to be picking up the one-hit KO. There is the battle research updating. That tells you that's a one-hit KO, and that's a good game. Hopping into the next match, leading Shadow Malamar into Shadow Alolan Ninetales. Ninetales will always run Powder Snow this season, but the Powder Snow variant is still very awkward for the Malamar because the Powder Snow variant just simply outpaces. It's 5-4 pacing to the Weather Ball instead of Malamar, which is consistently 10 turns to Superpower. Foul Play Bait is a successful one, but Ninetales will always have a pacing advantage. It's not like Diggersby in the back really wants to deal with this Pokemon either. Malamar will take it to the 2-shield. Opponent opts out and safe switches into Shadow Quagsire. Oh my goodness, Malamar would love nothing more than to get a Protect Shield here. It does get the Protect Shield, and the moment the opponent's shields are gone, in comes Aegislash. And this is where Aegislash just feels absolutely unbeatable. You get it in these shields down scenarios, you switch it in, it absorbs every hit, it farms up to the back-to-back, and you know you're not only taking the knockout on the Pokemon in front of you, but you're probably dealing massive damage on whatever they send in next. Quagsire will win Charge Attack priority over the Aegislash because Aegislash is still in its shield form, which has a very low attack stat. However, Aegislash now gets to transform into its blade form, and we already know this Shadow Ball is picking up the one-hit knockout. Down goes Quagsire. Whatever the opponent sends in next is going to get destroyed. It's going to be a Stunfisk, and the Thundershocks barely miss the knockout. This Shadow Ball will miss the knockout, but that is just devastating damage. Stunfisk loses 3/4 of its health bar, and now in comes Diggersby. Diggersby will be able to absorb the Mud Bomb damage, no problem. They send in the Ninetales, and Ninetales is going to get knocked out by the Superpower from the Shadow Malamar. So even despite a Core Breaker lead, Aegislash just absolutely dominating when shields are down, and that set up a very easy endgame cleanup for Diggersby and Malamar. And it appears the opponent has forced closed the application. I really wish trainers wouldn't do this. There's a top left button right conveniently put at the top left. If you don't like the fact that you lost the match, just resign. It's okay. No one's gonna be mad at you. People are only ever gonna get frustrated if you end up just force closing the application. But anyways, we move to the next match, and unfortunately, it's not getting any easier. Shadow Malamar into Morpeko. Not only does Morpeko have identical pacing to Malamar, but it does win Charge Attack priority. Electric type Aura Wheel will be shielded. Unfortunately, Malamar doesn't really have an opportunity to gain an advantage in this matchup, other than potentially catching the final Electric Aura Wheel onto Diggersby. Shield does come up. Another Charge Attack being launched by Morpeko. This will be the Dark type Aura Wheel. They do full send, so all Protect Shields are now down for the remainder of the game. Malamar gonna farm up to the back-to-back, going for the Foul Play Bait, but Morpeko is going to be winning Charge Attack priority, so I wouldn't be surprised to see a catch attempt onto the Diggersby, and there it is. Now the Superpower has been preserved. This is a +2 Electric Aura Wheel, but that's double resisted. Diggersby able to tank it no problem. Diggersby did get a sneak. Opponent reads it perfectly, and they're able to save Morpeko now with a Psychic Fangs banked and get a catch onto Cresselia. While this alignment is very bad, the switch timers are very heavily misaligned, and that is going to be what Junko uses to his advantage. Grass Knot is going to land 2 more Mud Shots, timers up, and in comes Aegislash. Now this is just free farm for Aegislash. Cresselia can never damage it. Cresselia can fire off Moonblast after Moonblast, and it just simply will not do a thing. Moonblast connects, there's a pivot, and the final Pokemon is revealed to be Corviknight. Aegislash farming up to the back-to-back Shadow Balls. It gets there right before the payback is available, and now they're just losing their entire Corviknight. Back-to-back Shadow Balls are guaranteed to take the knockout. Corviknight gets KO'd. Well, they're about to. They survived the first, but they're getting knocked out by the second, and Malamar is looking to switch in, as in comes Morpeko. Malamar firing off the Charge Attack as Morpeko hits the field. Only went for the Foul Play, but they're low enough that Foul Play will take the knockout. Back in comes Cresselia. What a game! I know this video started as a Diggersby feature, but I think it's going to end up being a little bit of a secret Aegislash feature. This Pokemon is incredible, and Diggersby's bulk and pacing does such a really nice job of setting it up. I think this is a really well-constructed team. Even in bad lead matchups like Malamar into the Ninetales, the Psywaves are so incredibly oppressive. Opponent catches onto Sableye, but Sableye is about to have an absolutely terrible day as there is a Diggersby in his future momentarily. Malamar banks a ton of energy, in comes Diggersby, and Diggersby can just survive foul play after foul play after foul play. Due to that normal sub-typing, the Shadow Claws are double resisted, so they have absolutely no way of doing any kind of meaningful fast move pressure. Another foul play is going to land. Diggersby will fire off the Fire Punch, not wanting to take a third foul play because a third foul play would come pretty close to securing the knockout. But Diggersby exits with energy, and that is a problem if the Ninetales get sent back in. Back in comes the Ninetales. Diggersby going to strike first as it goes for the Fire Punch. Fire Punch is going to be shielded, and there's an aggressive pivot back into the Malamar. Malamar going for Superpower, just trying to get that final Protect Shield down because once it's down, we already know what's going to happen next. Opponent makes a very nice catch on a Jellicent. Hold on. That Superpower catch onto Jellicent may have just won them this game, because now Jellicent gets the full farm down. In comes Aegislash, but Aegislash really does not like taking Jellicent Shadow Balls. Jellicent farms all the way up to 100 energy. They do throw an alignment, and Aegislash will put up the shield. But unfortunately, there's more where that came from, but there's the catch onto the Diggersby. What a play! Able to catch the Shadow Ball where it is double resisted, and that is a big problem for the opponent. Diggersby farms up a ton. There's the switch into the Alolan Ninetales, but the opponent just sealed their fate because they switched out the Jellicent. Now Aegislash just gets to farm up to the back-to-back moves, and there's nothing they could do. They had to keep the Jellicent on the field. If they ever pivoted out, it was a guaranteed loss because now Aegislash just doubles up. And the CMP tie for Aegislash is determined by what form it is in. So, after it switches to Blade form, it's going to be winning charge attack priority over this Jellicent by an incredible amount. Back in comes Jellicent, Shadow Ball takes the one-hit knockout, and that is a good game. Overall, I enjoyed how technical a lot of these games felt. Between the combination of Diggersby's new pacing, its massive bulk, and Malamar's insane shield pressure, consistently forcing the opponents to give up both shields to set up the Aegislash to sweep in the back, proved to be a pretty consistent winning strategy. Now, is this a team that I would recommend for absolutely every trainer? I think the answer is probably no, just because Aegislash, again as I mentioned earlier, is a pretty technical Pokemon. There's a pretty high skill ceiling in terms of how much do you overfarm, when do you switch it in, when are you firing off energy, are you saving shields for it, are you how do you best set up the Aegislash? Do you need to farm a few more chargings, or do you need to throw immediately and then get extra Psycho Cuts, because you do get more energy generation in the Blade form than the Shield form. There's a pretty high skill ceiling to the Mon, but I do think the Mon is extremely strong. Now, I do feel a little bit bad. It feels like Diggersby a little bit got his video hijacked by how strong the Aegislash was. But I do think Diggersby, it's an incredibly safe answer to many of the Fortress teams, as so many Fortress teams are just flagrantly ABA weak to Diggersby, and Diggersby can just absolutely feast on so many of those team compositions. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed watching today's video, please do leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you have not. And an extra special thank you, as always, to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide to the channel is so appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.